Welcome back to The Hook on Woodward Sports Network. We are so lucky to have Rod Allen here in studio with us. Rod, so many questions, but first let's just talk about the big elephant I feel in the world of baseball. I mean, are pitchers doctoring baseball?
Well, I think they are. I think Major League Baseball knew that it was a problem, and at the beginning of the season, I think they called all 30 managers and their bench coaches, and they told them that they were going to start, doing some things to try to figure out how rapid the problem was. Throwing out some baseballs, different things like that. They weren't necessarily pointing out players as they threw out some of Trevor Bauer's baseballs early. Everybody thought they were targeting him, but they weren't. They were kind of looking at the situation and what the problem is. But the fact of the matter is it's tougher to hit now in baseball than it's ever been, and they have to find out exactly what the length of the problem is. There is a problem, and they're trying to figure it out.
Well, Garrett Cole was called out by the Twins the other day, last week.
Remind people who Garrett Cole is. He is the $324 million pitcher for the who, Tom?
Who, Tom?
The New York Yankees.
Who
but
cares, Tom? Who cares?
He was the Houston Astros, won the Cy Young. This guy is the best pitcher in baseball right now, bar none. Josh Donaldson, the Twins DH, used to be with the A's. He kind of called him out a couple of weeks ago. He's like, I think this guy is throwing with something on the ball that makes it move. So yesterday at the Yankees press conference, the New York reporters, of course, are going to ask him. This is what it sounded like. Check this out.
And have you ever used spider tap while pitching?
I don't. I don't know. I don't know if. I don't quite know how to answer that, to be honest. I mean, there are customs and practices that have been passed down from older players to younger players, from the last generation of players to this generation of players, and I think there are some things that are certainly out of bounds in that regard, and I've stood pretty firm in terms of that.
Pretty firm
in terms of the communication between our peers and whatnot. And I again, like I mentioned earlier, there's this is important to a lot of people that love the game, and this is including the players in this room, including fans, including teams. And so if MLB wants to legislate some more stuff, that's a conversation that we can have, because ultimately we should all be pulling in the same direction on this.
This is a guy that played for the Houston Astros that won the World Series, that were banging trash cans, that had computers underneath their shirts.
Yep.
Jose Altuve.
Matt, before you get any further,
Yeah.
okay, first of all, Matt, we all know here Maz knows more hockey than I do. Right,
That's
so
what
I'm not. He hasn't claimed he knows more baseball than you yet, Rod. But would you consider Garrett Cole the best pitcher in baseball?
He is probably top two. DeGrom would be in that same conversation.
Okay, thank you very much.
Also in New
because I
York.
consider you the baseball expert at the table, so I'll take that for you, people at home.
He's country
and also
strong.
too, the answer for you guys at home. When Garrett Cole, guilty or not, when he says, "Have you ever used this?" The answer is, what the hell is spider majija?
Yes.
That's right there. You don't have to answer anything. I don't care if he did or he didn't. The perception of public opinion is bad.
I know. I mean, that's like...
That reminded me of
don't ever-
Harbaugh's comments coming out of the Wolverines about, with everything that's coming out of there, about just no grasp concept of the situation.
Do you remember the other dirty word back in the day, Rod? Androstenedion.
Yeah, it was.
Androstenedion.
Yeah.
That was what the steroid was.
Yeah.
That's what McGuire used, and Barry Bonds used, and Rafael Palmeiro, Pudge, or whoever the hell else used it.
Clearly, Garrett Cole is not the only pitcher
No.
that is using something. And really, most hitters don't mind if a pitcher uses a little something, a little pine tar, a little stickum, to make sure they've got a good grip
You mean
on
like
the
Kenny
baseball.
Rogers in 06?
Whatever the case
back
may be,
here,
because
remember? It was all over his back.
guys are throwing 98, 99, 100 miles an hour, and quite frankly, it's harder to hit now than it has ever been. And then you add in the fact that some of these, you brought up, we're going to talk maybe National League, you got pitchers that are trying to hit against guys that are throwing this hard. It's scary right now.
Yeah.
They have to figure it out.
My question to you, Rod, is like you said, does a hitter who's facing 100-mile-an-hour fastballs, because we don't know what it's like, you do you want the pitcher to have more control on the ball so you don't get beamed and you're So what I took from that is when they do this, it gives them more control. What we hear as a fan is, well, it increases the spin rate and it increases this and the dives and stuff like this. But you brought up a great point. 100 miles an hour as a hitter, I want him to know where he's throwing it.
Absolutely. But see, there's a fine line between, cheating and,
Right.
Just wanting to have
Pushing
a good grip
the
on the
edge.
baseball.
Right.
But obviously, in the last couple of years, I mean, it's been a lot of talk about spin rate, a lot of analytics, a lot of that stuff is going on. And so you have a lot of pitchers that are doing it. And you have guys now throwing harder than they've ever thrown before with unbelievable spin rate. So obviously something is happening. You don't mind, Darren, a guy having, it for just the grip. But
Right.
then when it's cheating, it's cheating.
Right. There's a fine line sort of pushing. So what you're saying is just like we've seen in the NHL playoffs, we've seen in football, where the rules, sort of the line of where the rules has changed. Because I'm sure when you played back in the day, well, the Gaylord period, but it was sort of, it was like it was sort of
Right.
like part of your menage. You knew he was doing it, but
Gaylord Perry was almost comedy though back in the day because he started reaching here and reaching there.
He had
and
Vaseline
he was
everywhere.
he was a great guy though, man. When I played with the Seattle Mariners, he kind of took me under his wing, and we stayed in the same hotel. He had a teenage daughter, and they played tennis every day. And he used to ask me to come out and play tennis with him. He was a really good
That's
guy.
awesome.
Man,
Real
how about
good
Phil
dude,
Negro?
man.
He
Yeah.
worked it as well.
Well, them guys stayed around a long time,
They did.
man.
They're
You know what I
knuckleballers.
mean? You know what they say? If you ain't cheating, you ain't trying.
That's right.
Yeah, right.
Now, listen, you asked about the hitters, Mac, and I'm going to tell you, Fernando Tatis is top 3 hitter in the game.
Yep.
The most
doesn't
recognizable
care.
player.
He don't care about it.
But he was on Dan Patrick's show today, and Dan asked him point blank about the pitchers.
Wait, Maz, before we go to that, I actually have one more thing about the Garrett Cole video.
Yeah, go
I
ahead,
actually have a
Alex.
clip that I think sums it up quite well, and I want to play it for you right now.
Please do.
Jerry, just remember, it's not a lie if you believe it.
Alex, I couldn't agree more. That was a
It
perfect,
is.
perfect way. George Costanza telling it like it is. This is Fernando Tatis Jr. on the Dan Patrick Show.
What do you make of all of this, the pitchers with putting tacky stuff on the ball? Have you noticed anything with pitchers? Could you tell if they put something sticky on the baseball when they throw it?
It's different. It's different. I've seen pitches this year I've never seen in my life. And
Really?
it's hard. It's hard. Yeah, it's hard. It's fastball is hard.
When we last left off, you said that you're seeing pitches you've never seen before. Explain that to us.
It's just the difference. It's just better pitches, more spin rate. It's just 3 minutes way harder this year to hit.
But do you have any problem with pitchers being allowed to use this kind of substance, sticky stuff, to throw?
Well, I guess that just depends on the MLB and going by call, you know?
Yeah, but do you think it's unfair because you have to face these pitches, and the numbers are down for hitters? I mean, everybody's throwing 100, and it feels like, I mean, you got guys throwing no hitters. I mean, it's pretty scary out there, I would imagine, as a hitter.
Well, if they allow that, they better expect less from hitters. And that's just a fact, you know? But what can we say? It's just harder, man. It's just harder.
That's Fernando. By the way, did you notice that they went from the V-Mix when that was effing up to a phone line? So I just want to let you know we're not
It
the only
happens.
They had
show
a
in
lot
town.
more
It
stuff in
happens.
their
It
studio than
happens.
we have in here.
That's all I got to
so-
say.
Rod, hearing somebody else and their response, I feel like his response was very politically correct, right? Like it's up to the MLB and it's not
Right.
like that. But when everybody's calling it the sticky stuff, it's kind of what it's known as when it hits the bat. Does that slow down the rate of the ball at all and how far it goes?
No,
Or-
I don't think it has anything to do with once the hitter makes contact with the baseball. But what it does is it helps. It used to be where spin rate was just judged when balls stay up in the strike zone. But now you have guys that have high velocity, guys that are throwing 98, 99. And when the ball is getting in the strike zone, it's exploding this way. It's exploding that way. I was listening to Kenley Jansen do an interview yesterday. And he was talking about his cutter and his two-seam fastball. He said sometimes he doesn't know whether it's going to go up or go down. And I have to believe that that's probably because of some of what they're using on the baseball.
I don't know. I don't know if this is any different than when – is this This isn't as bad as steroid
No,
use.
it's
Am
not.
I correct?
No, it's not as bad as steroids. I mean, because I think with steroids, everybody kind of turned a blind eye to that, and they allowed some teams and some players to really capitalize on that era of baseball. But I think what they're trying to do now, especially because the offense is on record pace to be the worst average in the history of the game. So they're trying to create offense. They're trying to get kids and people involved in the game. And if they don't start hitting, if they don't start playing some more conventional baseball where you see stolen bases and you see some other things that kind of excite you at the baseball game, they're going to lose a generation of fans. And they don't want to do that. And that's why they're trying to get a handle on why these pitchers are so dominant and trying to figure out a way so they won't be as dominant so some of these guys can start putting the ball in play.
Matt, in hockey, there are guys that bend their stick, and how do you cheat in hockey?
Fighting.
That ain't cheating. That's keeping it.
How do you have an advantage in hockey?
No, you cheat. Well, here's the thing, right? So you have the curve of the stick, right. So you used to back in the day, you'd heat your stick, and then back to the last time the Canadians won the Stanley Cup back in '93. Well, they played LA Kings, and Marty McSorley got called for an illegal stick in the finals that Montreal was able to tie the game and then score in overtime and led them on to win. So that's the biggest one. A lot of the thing is the goalie stick too and stuff like this. But my question to Rod, back to you, is the fact we've seen so many no-hitters early in the season, the fact that this has accelerated Major League Baseball to put, like you said, because the batting's down and stuff, is this why we're focused in on this?
I think it's part of it, but as I said to you before the season even started, they already called all the managers and told them they believed that we had a problem. We're going to look at it and we're going to analyze it and see how deep that problem is. But I think it probably did ratchet up a little bit with all the no-hitters being thrown at the beginning of the season. And no disrespect to any of the guys that threw a no-hitter, but a lot of them were from guys that you just really had never heard from.
And
before.
surgery. Tommy
guys that
surgery,
not necessarily had been
stuff.
known as guys to throw a no-hitter.
Well, Spencer Turnbull, right? God bless him and everything. The resilience he showed, hadn't pitched through 7 innings and pitched his first no-hitter.
Yeah.
So whether yes, no, indifferent, it brings up sort of the question.
There's no doubt, as I said earlier, that hitting is very difficult these days, but you still have some guys out there that are able to hit that high velocity. Speaking
of that, we saw another highlight from the guys leading the majors, 17th, Shohei Ohtani.
Oh, my goodness.
Can you speak about it? Because you played in Japan.
Right.
You played here. He's a dominant starting pitcher also. Is he a true unicorn, or is this something that could we see this
could call him
start
whatever
a hybrid?
You want to call him, man.
Does it give kids a different option, or what do you see?
No, you're not going to see this again. I mean, there might be a few guys out there, and there have been a couple of guys that have been known to be really good college hitters and really good college pitchers, but nothing at this level. This guy throws 100 miles an hour, and he also hits a baseball 470, 480 feet, and he can steal bases. He can run the bases. He can play the outfield. This guy's a freak of nature. Yeah. Baseball's never seen anybody like Shohei Ohtani, and every time that he's on television, if I was you and you're a baseball fan, I would stop and watch him because you're seeing somebody that's spectacular. No one's ever seen anybody like this before.
And then you got Joe Madden pulling the string. So Joe Madden comes out and he does double switches. He puts him in the outfield, takes him off the hill, puts him in the outfield, keeps him in the lineup, and then he could put him back at pitcher if he wants.
He could do
Isn't that something?
He would never do that with Shohei because his arm is just way too precious. Can you imagine if he really concentrated on one phase of the game, whether it be pitching or hitting, how good this guy would be? But it's just not his power and his pitching power. This guy is a really good baseball player.
Okay.
He can run.
Compare him with Ichiro.
Oh, I like Shohei better, I think, even though Ichiro was a magician with that bat, and he could play some defense, and he could steal some bases, and he was must-see TV. I would still have to go with Shohei Ohtani. Even though I've watched Ichiro for 15 years, me making the choice on Ohtani being here just for a small sample size, I would go Ohtani.
Hey, plenty more to talk about with Rod Allen. He's here. He's country strong. We got him in from Arizona, especially for today. We're talking Tigers and a lot of other stuff when we come back on The Hook on Woodward Sports Network.
Welcome back to The Hook on Woodward Sports Network. We've got Rod Allen joining us here in studio. Great stuff. We're so excited to have you here. Thanks so much again.
It's a blast. I'm having a great time.
The time.
But it is warm in here, right?
It's very warm in here.
What are you guys talking about?
Rod
Cool
wasn't dressed for this. Look,
here. I guess I
Rod
must
is in
be
a
the only
long
guy in
sleeve
shape.
terry cloth hoodie. I mean, the guy dresses to the nines, but
Yeah.
Well, that's because you told
You
me
guys
you're
are sweating.
broadcasting
You guys
from
are sweating,
outside.
too.
man.
We
You
are.
lied to
No,
me.
we are. But we're used to this.
Yeah.
Hey,
We're used to this.
I used to watch it, when
You're the fan, yeah.
he'd come into work, up at Comerica Park, he'd be in his beautiful suit, always dressed to the nines. Him and Mario were great TV to watch. We miss you guys
Absolutely.
here in town. Speaking of the Tigers, and I know you still hold them near and dear to your heart. Obviously,
sure.
you played on that 84 World Series. Before I talk about the new Tigers, tell me about that old 84 Tiger team.
Well, it was special, and you're talking about a guy that that came over in '94, and I didn't really know a lot of those guys at the beginning of spring training because I was in minor league spring training when it started. But I played well enough to get across the street, and that's where I started to meet guys like Alan Trammell and Kirk Gibson and Chet Lemon and Whitaker, and I had already known Sparky Anderson because I played on a championship team, and we went to the World Series back in '76, so I met him before. But just getting a chance to get in the locker room with those guys and such professionals led by Sparky Anderson, and then having that start 35-5, I mean, it's obviously something that will go down as one of the best accomplishments in all sports. I mean, it was just
something?
it was every day you went to the ballpark, you just felt like you were going to win. It didn't matter who was pitching. It was incredible. What a ride. It was incredible.
Who ended it again? Do you remember? Who ended
Who did we lose? Seattle, wasn't it?
I think it
Yeah,
was.
we swept the Angels.
That's right. You went into Seattle. They
And
weren't
then
a very
we
good
got
team.
swept.
And you got swept by them.
Yeah, got swept in Seattle.
Man. All right, how about these new
Glad
Tigers?
you always leave it positive, man.
I just asked a trivia question. That's just a trivia question to me.
Before you start asking about the new Tigers, what is the biggest difference that you feel from baseball then and baseball today?
Well, I just think that the game obviously is different. I mean, you back then you had 9 guys on the field, and you had 9 guys playing positions like shortstop and second base and your outfield positions. Now you got guys that are all over the place. All your guys hitters are trying to hit home runs, whether they're power hitters or not. I mean, there's an uphill swing, and you also have pitchers, and you have organizations that pattern themselves on numbers and different things like that. So I just think the game's changed a lot in that regard. Some will say it's better, some might not say that, but the game continues to evolve. But those are some of the differences from when I played.
Hey, Detroit Dabber 313 on our social media says his favorite thing of the '84 Tigers was when Sparky Anderson was chatting out to Kirk Gibson, and he was like, "He don't want to walk you.
He don't want to walk
Goose
you.
Gossage don't want to walk you." And then one pitch later,
He hit it out.
there it goes.
And
to
Sparky
wrap
did
it
the
up.
little. He did the little.
I mean, he did it all. I
Yeah,
mean,
Sparky was an unbelievable manager. He was a great communicator, and he's one of the main reasons why that team went on to win that World Series and were so good while he was here. He was unbelievable.
We had Jim Leland. We had him on last week.
Yeah.
We had him on because of the imperfect game that you were a part of.
Yeah.
Where Armando Galarraga.
Right.
Take us back to that day, man. I mean, really.
Special.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, Armando wasn't really having a great year, but that particular evening, he was just cool, calm, and collected. I mean, his two-seamer had a lot of tilt. He had a good breaking ball. The Indians had no chance whatsoever. I mean, Gruzzalonic comes up in the 9th inning, hits that ball to center field, and Jackson runs it down. I jump out of my seat, and I scared Mario by screaming, "Oh, Jackson." He looked over at me like I was crazy, and he was able to finish his call. Now, usually I don't like to step on the play-by-play guy because that's his call. But when Jackson made that catch, that was all I could think was, "Oh, Jackson." And I just stood up and went from there to a couple plays later, the Donaldson play at first base, not getting the call there by Jim Joyce. But just the emotion of that entire inning was crazy. But then the next day, when I got to the ballpark, and I knew Jim Joyce from our minor league days. He was a minor league umpire when I was a minor league player. So I knew him personally. And I saw him walking into the ballpark that day, and I could tell he had been crying all night. I think his mom lived in Toledo. And I gave him a big hug, man. I told him, "You're going to be all right." And he was still crying. He just hit me on my chest, man. And it was a very special moment for me to give him that hug. But then for Armando to take the lineup card out, and just the way it was all orchestrated, I don't know. I mean, obviously, he would have loved to have the perfect game, but I think he gets more run out of it by not throwing it.
You're
you
not
know
kidding.
what
We
I'm
have an
saying?
anniversary, right?
Yeah.
Got a car.
You're right.
Got
You're
a Corvette.
absolutely right.
But
You
what?
have a
But
Corvette?
what? I was so blessed here, man, to watch the Verlander no hitters and Miguel do what he did for so long, and Scherzer. I mean, so many great players in that particular era of Dave Dombrowski and Jim Leland. No championships, but man, the baseball was good.
06 to 14. You couldn't have.
I had the best job in the country.
What a deal!
I had the best job in the
I
country.
mean, that was such a special team here in Detroit.
Every night.
What a team!
$3 million a night.
What is
a year.
it you see? We were talking managers and stuff. What the job that AJ Hinch is doing? Because you'll have a little bit more insight of the direction, but it seems like they're trying to get a foundation in place.
He's a great manager. He's a great individual. He checks all the boxes. I mean, he was a player. He worked in player development. He has scouted. He's been in the front office. He's won a world championship as a manager. He caught in the big leagues, and a lot of times catchers are thought of as being a little bit smarter than most of the other players. But just the way that he talks to the media, you can see how cool and calm he is, and the way that he talks to everybody, respectful. He's the right guy, and the players will play hard for him, just as they played for Jim Leland. But they got it right when they hired AJ Hinch, and they really wanted him bad because they called him at midnight right after his suspension was over.
As soon as it was done. I'm glad he took the deal here. I'll tell you, man. And this Tiger team is starting. I see.
And one more thing here about AJ
please.
before we get there is that what they're talking about now with the Tiger grip and all those different things, because he has been suspended. He knows that Major League Baseball is very serious about this, and he's going to make sure that his players do not cross the line, because he knows the ramifications of what can happen when you do cross the lines, because he had to live it for a year.
No doubt about it. And Justin Verlander went from here to Houston and won a World Series with that team.
Yes.
So, he knows a little bit about that as well. But getting into these new Tigers, these new kids.
Yep.
Casey Mize is pitching tonight. He's becoming the ace that they thought he was going to be. This kid is starting to pitch well. So is Tarek Skubal. Struck out 11 the other day. And Turnbull, of course, with the no-hitter a few weeks ago. He's on the 10-day injured list right now. What do you think of that big three? Matt Manning down in AAA. That's kind of the guys that they put their eggs in the basket for right now.
Well, those are the guys that they've been talking about for quite some time now. Turnbull through the no-hitter. His stuff was electric, 96 with movement. Skubal struck out a bunch the other day, left-handed. And then you talk about Casey Mize. He's what they look like. I mean, he's what number ones look like. They can go up against other number ones on other teams, and you as a team, you feel like you've got a chance to win. His stuff's electric. His mound presence is very good. He's only going to get better. So I kind of like the direction the Tigers are going, especially with their pitching staff, and they're starting to get some position players as well.
Mac, you see a light at the end of the tunnel like me. I know you do.
Yeah, no, eventually, because you're getting the right pieces in place. They get rid of the GM. They'll be better. Well, look about it. We talk about this all the time.
And Al.
I know Al's a buddy of mine, man. Good.
Can we stop and
Go
say
ahead.
Al Avila is a great dude?
He is.
As a person, we're talking about a manager and what he's done. As we look down, and I got to hear Maz whine and complain about Nick Castellanos. Did you know he's going to be this good?
He's leading the league in hitting.
He's doing this, and then obviously got to hear every day about him, JD Martinez, which we knew. So
nothing for him too.
But see, that's what I got to deal with every day. But I see in every sports team here in Detroit, progress, not perfection, guys in place. My question to you is what we saw earlier. Eric Haas last night hits his 8th home run. I'm a little pretty because he's a catcher, number 13. Lance Parrish was.
Right.
That was
Big
my
wheel.
guy. And but he's also a different situation because he's had a go around before. He knows what it takes. I mean, you got to cheer for a guy who gets dropped off by his mom for his first Major League Baseball game. I mean, what a lucky guy. But how about some of the younger talent or some of the guys like him or
Akil Baddoo?
Well, just different things to talk about.
They've been wonderful stories. I mean, obviously, Baddoo got off to a crazy start here. I mean, and he had the whole town, talking about the Tigers, and that was good at the beginning of the season because that's what you need at the beginning of the season. You want everybody to get behind you. We've already talked about Mize. We've talked about Turnbull. The young catcher up now. Rogers has done.
Jake Rogers.
Bad
Rogers
mustache,
doing a
very
terrible mustache.
Doing a very good
you have
job.
No 80s porn love. Jesus, come on, man. That's just rocking it out.
I mean, they still have a ways to go before they get the kind of talent. I remember when Dave Dombrowski was the general manager, and Dave was a friend of mine.
Good old days.
I spent a lot of time with Dave, and what good teams look like, and you can start to understand when your team gets to be good. When your team is in a position to win a championship, you've got a top 5 player at every position. So you can look at the Tigers and say whatever you want to say about them, and you look at how many top 5 players they have in the league at certain positions, and it'll probably tell you that's why they're 12 games under 500. But then you start looking at the Chicago White Sox, you start going around their diamond, and you start looking at the Yankees, you start going around their diamond. These guys have got top 5 players at every position, and that's what your really good general managers are trying to accomplish these days. That's how you win championships. championship.
But the problem is Dombrowski kind of emptied the minors to get him.
Well, that's okay. We had a lot of fun.
We did.
We had a lot of fun. A lot of good baseball.
The most fun I've ever
should have
had
won a
watching
championship.
a team.
You know, and I thought he. I mean, obviously we should have had a
sin.
closer in there, but I mean, it just some of the stuff that happened, like the home run that Benoit gave up to David Ortiz.
Oh my God.
I mean, in Boston.
We talked to Jim Leland about that. He says he still has nightmares about that.
Oh my goodness! You know, the thing about that is that.
Oh, that was me. I think.
You know, Phil Koch was on the roster at that time. If the reason Phil Koch, David Ortiz, I think was 2 for 20 against Phil Koch, but for whatever reason, Phil Koch didn't come in that game.
Oh my!
What
God.
about my biggest pet peeve? Like you said, the baseball, they'll figure it out. It's sort of the pitch and everything. But how about they can't get Major League Replay right, or even the umpire? I mean, like, how can you not get replay right?
Right.
Like that's the biggest thing.
The
like,
obvious
do you
replays,
think that
too.
that it's more of a serious talk? Because I always poo-pooed at the fact of maybe the automatic balls and strikes by a machine.
Right.
But are we getting closer to that point than further away, in your opinion?
I think for the most part, the umpires are correct on the field 99.9% of the time with the calls that they make. And they're making the calls, I mean, in split seconds. I mean, they really are. These guys are really special. But I do not understand sometimes when they do go back to New York and they ask other umpires in the room to look at a play and convene, and they have several guys watching it, and they come up with a different answer than most people watching the game. Yeah. That puzzles me. And sometimes they don't have the same look as other teams have. So apparently they'll figure it out. I mean, Major League Baseball obviously is a wonderful sport, and it's not a perfect sport.
No, we love it.
But they've got some things they've got to get worked out.
How about the
that's
DH?
for sure.
Should the DH
The
be in
DH
both
should
leagues?
be in both leagues.
Thank
I mean, you can't have guys getting hurt. Although when I broadcast games in Arizona, I'd love to see the strategy in those games. Because back in those days, you had guys that were bunting, you had hit and runs, you didn't have guys all over the place. I kind of like that kind of baseball in the National League. It wasn't that way in the American League. You had more mashers, more guys like the Yankees, all the Tigers teams, they power hitters, Boston power hitters. So I kind of enjoyed it, but now it's time to have
no doubt.
the DH.
And what do you
in
think
both
of the
leagues.
new rule in the extra innings?
I
that
like
they're
the
putting
one.
a runner
I
on
like
second?
I like the runner on second base.
You do.
I mean, I don't necessarily want
'cause
to watch
you could get out
15.
the
Sometimes
ballpark.
I
I don't
forget.
necessarily want to watch 15, 16 innings.
know.
I think it's cool. I mean,
Sometimes
9
I'm
innings.
sitting
Put
there.
a guy on second base and let's win the game. And the way pitchers are throwing now, you might be playing for 3 out for 5
know.
more hours because you
Yeah.
can't hit them guys in the bullpen.
I'm just sitting there sometimes watching the game, and I forget that there's a runner at second. I'm like, how the hell did he get to second? I mean, that happens still to this. And there was a Tony La
Yeah,
Russa
well, you
messed
got
up
some
the
guys.
game.
Yeah, some guys still don't know all the rules. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's a Hall of Famer, though.
I know. Hey, we got to let you go before you sweat your
got-
way out of
No,
here.
we're good,
Fish
man. We're
Fish
good.
has a quick question for you. We'll let Fish get in a quick question.
Hey, Rod, it's Sam Fisher. People call me Fish here. I applaud you because we have another show with Joyce Bell and Sean Baligian, and those losers have to have the air on during their show.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Wait, why do they get to have the air on?
Joyce
This I
insists.
didn't know.
Yeah, because Joyce
So
Bell and
Joyce
Sean
spells his
Starts with a
name
D and ends with an A.
D-I-V-A, and he gets his way.
When I come back, we're going to have the arrow, too.
Yeah, I didn't know that, Rod. I didn't know that
Sean
Joy gets...
Baligian and Joyce Bell, they went on a massive rant for like 50 minutes during one of the shows saying that they need the air on. They had the air off for 10 minutes. They went nuts. 10 minutes.
Wow. See, that's the whole saying about the squeaky wheel gets the grease or whatever
That's
it is.
it.
No.
That's it.
Stick is saying no. Don't even think about it, Pilar.
Yeah.
Had I known that, Rod, had I known that, I
Stick.
would have made up a
Tell-
sting
Yes,
and
indeed.
gotten
I
you
should
a
have.
C.
Next
I
time
would
I
have...
Don't
come
want to
back.
sound like AM radio.
Next
and
time.
If those guys are okay sounding like AM radio, let those guys be okay
I
with it.
agree.
The rest of the
Hey,
shows are
am
going
I-
to sound like digital.
Yeah.
Stick, I got from you to me, like upper management to talk here. I think Art's spending too much time rubbing off on Fish. Can we watch that, please? I'm gonna have to put that in my HR report.
It is a
We
concern.
need to watch art in general.
I see.
Hey, Rod, before you get out of here, who's going to win the World Series?
Ooh, the World
Here in
Series,
June.
the World Series
We're in
this
June.
year.
Yeah. Give me your teams. Who's in it?
I
Dodgers
mean,
going
it's
to
kind of
defend?
hard not to go Dodgers. Kind
It'll
of
be
hard
tough
not
to
to go
beat.
Dodgers. And I'm going to go White Sox.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go White Sox.
And they're down 2 of their best players, too,
I'll go
and they're
White
still
Sox.
good.
I'll go White Sox.
All right, White Sox, Dodgers. I can go for that.
Yes.
I can go for that. Thanks so much for
Oh,
coming
well,
in.
thanks
man.
for having me. I'll
We gotta
come back.
do it again, all right?
I'll come back.
All right.
Lovely having you on.
Well,
always great to
so
see you,
much.
Rod.
So, when we come back, it's D-Max, Hack and Wax. So don't go anywhere. You're tuning into The Hook on Woodward Sports Network.